You're willing to take it. All right, next is, and I'm not sure if I can do this from here, is a little video that just kind of goes over very briefly. It's a minute and 20 seconds. Or we can skip it.
I don't know, it disappeared. Where did it?
But we can skip it.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. Now do we have
Oh, it's
volume?
going, okay.
Now do we have volume? Maybe not. That's okay. Everything's printed on the screen. Maybe. Maybe we should just,
Skip it.
yeah, we'll just go past it. All right, so our volunteers, the hub of the organization. Currently in Carver County, we have 37 active volunteer drivers, 2 rider registrars, 8 dispatchers in the Carver County chapter. The drivers, obviously, they drive. And we're going to get into that a little bit on the next slide. So our rider registrars, I mentioned earlier that our riders must be registered. So we have 2 to 3 people at any given time who take phone calls from prospective riders and get them registered in our system. They do a little intake process, talk about what WeCAB is and what WeCAB isn't, what we can do for them. And, you know, sometimes they cross between chapter and we just have to get that all figured out. So that's what our rider registrars do. They're really the first point of contact with WeCAB. Next would be our dispatchers. Our dispatchers are kind of the hidden people that work a long time. So they work in different, they can do anything from their home or wherever they're at. We actually have one volunteer who's so committed that she moved to Arizona and she was a Victoria resident, and still volunteers as a dispatcher today, and usually on Mondays. So they take phone calls from our riders who call in and say, I need a ride, I want to go to the borough in Victoria at 1 p.m. on Friday, and I want to come back at 3 p.m. And so our dispatchers enter that information and email it out to all of our drivers, and the drivers, in turn, can pick and choose from their email what rides they want to take. So our drivers can pick up whatever works for them. It's extremely flexible on all fronts. They can drive as little or as much as they may want, and they are able to just go ahead and accept all of that from their email. So that's a pretty simple way of doing it. So this was really just a brief overview. We want to thank you for your financial support. We hope that we can continue to count on you. We are very pleased to have received your 2019 contribution, and we hope we can count on you for 2020. With your help, WeCAB continues to grow and serve Victoria and Carver County. Any questions?
Thank you. Council, questions?
Are your drivers compensated in any way?
Drivers can receive reimbursement for mileage based on the charitable rate of 14 cents per mile. Almost none of them ask for it. I write about 4 checks a year.
Wow.
So at 200,000 miles, I'd be writing pretty big checks at this point, but
What's your annual operating budget?
roughly 50 to 60,000.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Next up, Lake Minnetonka Conservation District Board Member Ann. For the record, name and address, please, and
Sure.
what you do.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. I am Ann Hoelscher. I live at 920 Smithtown Terrace in Victoria. My family and I have been residents of Victoria for just over 15 years, and I have been privileged and honored to represent the City of Victoria on the LMCD, or the Lake Minnetonka Conservation District, for the past 7 years, and I look forward to doing that again if you're so inclined to reappoint me. The past 3 years, I've served as an officer on that on the LMCD. I also currently serve on the Lakes and Water Quality Advisory Committee for the city. I previously served on the Park and Rec Committee. Professionally, I'm an attorney and a small business owner. Lake Minnetonka is a really unique asset, and back in 1967, the state legislature recognized that and decided that they needed an equally unique way of regulating Lake Minnetonka and created the LMCD to do just that. We are governed by a board of directors consisting of 14 members, each appointed by their city council of each of the 14 cities surrounding the lake. Since 1967, our responsibilities have evolved. Initially, the LMCD was created to develop a comprehensive plan to regulate the use of the lake, but also to deal with some pollution. Since then, we've moved to doing several other things. Currently, we regulate dock structures and watercraft on Lake Minnetonka. We establish quiet water areas for public safety and environmental concerns. We regulate boating and winter use of the lake, and our regulations are a little bit different on Lake Minnetonka than they are on any other lake in Minnesota. We can create those regulations, and they are then enforced by the Hennepin County Sheriff's Water Patrol. We regulate boat density on Lake Minnetonka. We manage aquatic vegetation for navigational purposes, our harvesting program, and other efforts. We also engage in efforts to prevent the introduction of new aquatic invasive species on the lake. And we issue licenses and permits for different activities such as multiple docks, sailboat mooring areas, charter boats. We would issue their liquor licenses, permanent docks for residences, some special events, and de-icing in the winter around dock structures. Some current activities that we've been working on, we just recently passed a new wastewater discharge ordinance. In fact, I think a press release just went out today regarding that. You may have heard there was some illnesses this summer over the 4th of July on Lake Minnetonka. There was no definitive conclusion as to what exactly caused that illness in people, but we looked at our wastewater discharge and decided it could use some clarification. So we've made some changes to require that some of the big boats now have to have the pump that used to allow them to dump sewage into the lake. That has to actually be removed in order to operate their boat on Lake Minnetonka. So there can be no accidental, hopefully no one would do it on purpose, but can be no accidental discharge of waste into the water. It was already illegal to do that. This just made it a little more clear, and we're actually the only agency now requiring that that pump actually be removed. In other cases, they just had to lock that pump. We are also currently working with lake scientists and other partners, including the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District and others, to create a comprehensive aquatic invasive species strategy on Lake Minnetonka. This is a big deal. We're trying to figure out how we can really manage the lake. There's a lot of agencies that kind of have that do something, and nobody's really coordinating those efforts. So we're trying to figure that all out, and the LMCD is trying to become that coordinating body that can help all these other agencies and make sure that we're all working kind of together to keep AIS out of Lake Minnetonka and manage what's there and keep it from spreading to other lakes. We also are just about to get our winter rules brochure out just before the big snowstorm. So you can expect I will bring some of those down here, and you can put them out by your front desk when they're available. So I am excited to continue on the LMCD. It has been very eye-opening to me. As I said, I've lived on Lake Minnetonka for just over 15 years, and I am learning more and more every day. So it's a great opportunity for me. I'm very engaged, so I hope I'm serving the city well. I am always available for any comments or questions, or to meet with any of you to talk about things. And I'm happy now to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Ann. Council?
No, thank you so much for your volunteerism. We love engaged volunteers, and you're doing good work on behalf of the city, and we appreciate that, so thank you.
Thank you very
You're
much.
here.
And I did give you a little map and a little handout, so please enjoy. Thank you very much.
Council, any other questions, comments? No?
Just curious,
Yes.
have you given up on the chemical treatment of milfoil?
No, so we haven't given up on anything. The chemical treatments are only effective kind of in certain areas on a bay-wide use. For instance, I'm on Smithtown Bay. And some individuals can chemically treat their areas. I know, like our association, you get a permit from the DNR and can hire somebody to do that or do it yourself with a permit. It works great for individual residences. Our bay is too open, so it isn't appropriate, is what the scientists are telling us, for lake-wide or bay-wide treatment. It works really well in certain bays, so what the early information we're getting from our scientists is that we'll probably have to use a combined approach, maybe some chemicals in some areas and then probably some harvesting in some other areas.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your service. Anybody else that wants to address the council? Okay, next item, adopt the final agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
I make a motion that we adopt the regular agenda.
Thank you. Second, please.
Second motion.
Discussion. I'd like the council to consider an amendment to add in a brief discussion of the county's letter that was sent to us in regards to Marsh Lake Road. Can I get a second on that amendment?
I will happily second that.
All right, the discussion on that amendment, basically, this council's already unanimously decided to do Marsh Lake Road as a city road. I think you're all aware that that letter came in requesting us work with the county to start getting right-of-way for a county road at some point in the future. I think this council's already made that decision, and I'd like to consider adding it to the agenda so we can just simply say, let's kill the letter of agreement and let the county know if they want to go and get the right-of-way, they can do it, but I don't think the city should be participating. We've already made our decision. If the council wants to discuss that further, I'd be happy to table the motion and we can discuss it further. I don't think we need to spend time and effort on it, and so I'm just trying to say, unless the council thinks that we need a discussion, let's put it on there and just kill it if the council agrees. So thoughts on that?
So exactly what is the motion?
The motion is to add, the county sent us the letter requesting that we get involved and try to lay out and
Here it is.
lay out the 160, whatever the right-of-way necessary is for the county road 25 years from now, whenever it becomes a county road. And my point is, if the county wants to do that, fine, let the county do it. We shouldn't get in the middle of that. We've already voted to keep it a city road. And I don't want us to get embroiled in the right-of-way access and acquisition process. That's something the county does anyways. So I don't know why we need to even consider the letter.
So can the county do this without our involvement?
Yeah, I don't know why they need us. If they want to acquire
They can do
land.
anything you want.
Right, they do it all the time for county roads. And this is a county road that'll, at some point in the future.
Is this under?
Yeah, there's a few things, so just a general overview of the whole letter, I think would be, I don't think would take up that much time, but I would like to hear where the council sits on that, and just a real quick impressions, first impressions. Be good.
Okay, so this is under the consent agenda?
No, I'm trying to add this as a discussion item for the council to tonight's meeting, because it's not on the agenda.
Was this, I know we had bumped it from last council meeting. Do we have it slated for a future council meeting?
I see it under consent.
That's
Dana.
that's a different thing.
Mayor,
That's a different thing. Yeah, go ahead,
Mayor,
Dana.
Councilmember McMillan, members of the council, we have not officially programmed it, but staff on the future meetings list have programmed it to come back on December 9th to your meeting.
So the question and the reason I brought the amendment forward is if we're in agreement to just kill it and be done with it, then let's just do that. If you want to have the discussion, I'm fine with tabling the motion. We can have the discussion the next council meeting. But I thought since we've already decided this, there's nothing really more to talk about. But it's up to you. I mean, do we want to keep it on and have an in-depth discussion next council meeting? Or do we put it on tonight and just kill the letter?
Are we okay to put it on tonight?
Yeah, we as a council, we can modify the agenda and add it to the agenda.
Okay.
I'd prefer to have an in-depth discussion.
Okay, Deb,
Just
do
me.
you want to wait until the 9th, or do you want to put it on and?
Yeah, I personally, I have not studied this issue at all. I was
So you
not
prefer
prepared
we
to.
wait?
Yes, I prefer to wait. I'm not
Judy,
prepared to discuss
you
tonight.
Prefer to we wait, or we go forward?
Um,
And have the discussion tonight or next meeting?
since they're not prepared, I'm okay to wait.
All right, if that's, if the majority wants to wait, then I'll withdraw that motion. And so we do have a valid motion then to approve the final agenda as is without modifications. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The final agenda is adopted without modification. Next item, consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second, please.
I'll second it.
Discussion? Anybody want to pull anything? Council, staff, members of the public? All right, hearing none. All in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Consent agenda is adopted unanimously. Okay. First item up is in the regular agenda, item 7.1. It's the 2020 fee schedule, public hearing. Before we go and before I have and open the public hearing, I'd like to ask Cindy to give a brief overview, please.
Yep, so everything was laid out in the consent, or the agenda packet for you to review, and I can go through them if you want. Otherwise, I think if you've had a chance to go through, if you don't have any specific questions on those, but then Dana will be able to discuss the process that was used.
All right, so we can, let's, at that point, Dana, let me hold off for a second. I'm going to open the public hearing at this point to see if there's anybody who wants to address the council on this. And I don't see anybody coming to the podium, going once, twice. All right, sold. Can I have a motion to close the public hearing, please?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second, please.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. The public hearing is now closed. Dana, discussion on the fee schedule? Anything you want to add?
Mayor, members of the council, thank you. Just a couple of things to note. I know there were some questions about how do we come to make the fee determination when we're setting those fees. And I just wanted to make a couple of highlight notes for you related to those fees, so you know that there's some sort of rhyme or reason when we're making the fee proposal. So park and recreation fees, historically, we do compare with our cities, not necessarily market cities, but cities that are our neighbors that also have, we'll call them recreation centers. So Chaska, Chanhassen, Waconia, and Minnetonka. An apples-to-apples comparison is quite difficult in a number of cases, specifically with recreation centers, because the amenities are different and therefore the programs are different, but we try to do the best that we can. Generally speaking, our goal is to be competitive in the market. And with our youth programming, our fees are set to recover our costs as the market will allow. In our public works fees, for example, are mostly cost recovery. And most of those are set at hourly rates, so to recoup the cost of our staff that need to go out and respond to things. And so we did do a quick peek at market cities and what they're doing, and none of our market cities in the public works area have comprehensive or comparable lists that are actually published, so we would have to do some additional research to actually do a side-by-side comparison of those. But I just wanted to be able to demonstrate that we've gone through some exercise when setting these. We don't just automatically set an inflator or arbitrarily make these decisions. Couple more examples. Building inspections, that has a little bit of a spotlight on there this year. And there are some changes, if you read through your agenda packet, being proposed for that area. We did a more comprehensive review with all of our market cities this year. And what we found is that our building inspection fees were actually quite low, not even in the market, significantly under what most people were doing in the metro, and particularly for our market cities. And so we did increase, or we are proposing as part of this, to increase those fees from $50 to $75, and that still puts us at the very bottom of that fee scale in our market. Fees for decks, pools, finished basements are fixed fees, and those are placed at the low end of the scale. For fees, historically, those have been valuation-based, so we feel that this will be more beneficial, easier to administer, but also beneficial to those owners, make it more proportionate to the projects being dealt with. or the projects that our inspectors are going out to look at. So we feel that this will be a benefit to those that are actually adding decks or pools or finishing their basements. We do have a new fee proposed. It's called change in occupancy. It allows us to track changes in uses of buildings so we can address mostly life safety issues to make sure if you're taking something from an office to a dining place, we can make sure that our fire inspectors and our building inspectors are in there because the requirements for those uses are a little bit different. So just a small fee to recover the cost of the time there. And then all of our fees in the building and inspections area are meant to recover costs. So we are mindful of the projects that are there, and when we have those fees, we're making sure that those fees are proportionate to the services being provided. Utility rates, as we've talked about previously, we did not necessarily do a deep dive into a market comparison this year because in 2020, we'll be doing a rate study in water, sewer, and stormwater. And that rate study, as part of that process, will look at our market cities as well as other places within the metro to inform our decisions on future rates. So just wanted to give a brief update on the process that we as staff have gone through historically and specifically this year when making a recommendation to make changes to that proposed fee schedule.
Thank you.
And then one more thing I forgot to add, that the significant price increases were noted in all the workshop notices, so they're part of the budget for 2020.
Got it, thank you. Council, questions?
Yeah, I'm curious how we stack up against our benchmark cities in regard to our fees. And so I would love to see a comparison with those cities that we benchmark against. Is it possible to make a motion that we ask staff to provide that report?
Do we have that?
Yeah, do we need an actual motion? We could just get a consensus of the council, could we not?
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
How much time and hours would be looking at to pull all that data together? It's quite a bit of data.
Mayor, Councilmember Gregory, members of the council, it's an exercise, so it's not a particularly heavy lift, but it will require some time. Essentially, each department will have to go out to, we have 18 different market cities, I think 18. So we have to go out to all of their websites and look for the information. Some places it's easier found than others, and if we're not able to find that information, we'll have to make a phone call to get it. I would say roughly 4 to 6 hours per department to get that information.
Do you want to make a motion, and we'll just make it official?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we request staff show how we compare to our benchmark cities in terms of our fees.
Thank you. Second, please.
Second motion.
A discussion?
We've got 20 pages of fees here.
Do we want
This is a lot of
all
work.
18 cities?
Well, the water fees will be covered in the rate
In the
study.
rate study.
You're talking building fees, right? Is that true?
Which fees are you looking at, all of them?
My assumption by the motion was all
And
of them.
there's 20 pages of fees.
All right.
I think building fees is one of the building.
Do you want to withdraw that and do a new motion?
I think if we're going to be benchmarking against our market cities, we should do some benchmarking. And I think fees is one of those things. I am not opposed to, and actually, I might look for some direction from staff as to say, how do we chunk this project off in a couple of different ways? Maybe there's some building fees that we take care of in the first quarter, maybe I'm curious about franchise fees, how we compare to market cities and franchise fees. Certainly building and inspection.
Further discussion? We've got a valid motion, right, to have staff, to direct staff to look at all of the fees, not break them out. Do you want to, based on that discussion, Deb, do you want to modify your motion and make a new motion or just go forward?
I want to go forward.
Okay, we've got a valid second. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1. Is that correct? Councilmember Gregory said nay.
Oh, did he?
Yep.
Mayor, members of the council, thank you. Just a clarification, are you looking for, so with the information, we assume that you're not going to adopt the fee schedule tonight, which would, we would plan to bring this back.
Well, I don't think that's a fair
No,
assumption.
I agree. I think we should go ahead and move forward with the, adopting the fee schedule. And I can make that separate motion. But just for benchmarking purposes, if we're going to start benchmarking our activities against our market cities, I think this is a great place to start. Obviously, I don't want to hold up the budgeting process for this exercise, but certainly we would have this information available for next year.
So, thank you, Councilmember McMillan. Mayor, if I could, would you like to see a deeper dive? We could do this as part of the budget process next year and do that deep dive and bring back that information as part of the entire budget process. So you've got a full, which could
That would be agreeable to me.
I
That would
like
be
that.
agreeable to me.
Any
Yes.
objection?
Sure.
Good.
That sounds
Mr. Gregory?
fine.
That's fine. That sounds good.
Okay, we'll do that as part of the budget process, the 2021 budget process, but in 2020 then.
So do I need to amend my motion?
Yeah,
Or withdraw it?
No.
Yep. But then I do have to say that I forgot to put the actual ordinance into the packet, so if you do go forward, it just is, it's still valid, but just to know I didn't include this one page that has the ordinance. I put the title and stuff in the packet.
All right, so
My staff report.
to that point, you want us to approve a resolution and adopt an ordinance, correct?
First, adopt the ordinance for
Can we bring that
adopting a revised fee schedule, and then the next one would be a summary resolution.
All
I
right,
think
could you
that's in my staff report.
I make a motion to adopt the ordinance adopting a revised fee schedule.
Can I get a second on that, please?
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
I make a motion to approve the resolution authorizing ordinance publication by title and summary.
Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, Trish, was that, I'm sorry, Cindy, was that all you needed on
Yes,
that?
thank you very much.
Yep. And I said Trish, because Trish, you have the next one, 7-2? Where you at? There you go. 2020 budget public input.
Mayor, council members, tonight we are asking for public input on the 2020 budget. This is required by the state that we provide a time and place for the public to come to raise any questions that they might have about the 2020 budget. So this is just open to the public at this point. It's not a public hearing, it's just we're available to answer questions.
Well, given that there's no public here, my guess is they don't have anything to add. We don't have to close this like a public hearing, right?
Any callers on the line?
Right. Hello? What is it? Bueller. Dana, do we need to do anything here? There's no motion with this. We just had to ask for input.
All done.
All right. If there's nothing else, then I guess we go to the roundtable. Council? Deb, anything for the roundtable?
No, I think I'm good.
All right, I keep putting you on the spot, don't
I know, start on the other end.
All right, we'll do that. Mr. Gregory, you go first, roundtable.
Nothing for the roundtable, Mayor.
All right, Judy?
I just wanted to ask, since we're doing the Wasserman Park, has anybody thought about connecting the trail so that people can get there?
Yes, that's come up a number of times with the public. There's a number of topographical, is that the right way to describe it? Topography-related issues in the sense of the road there and the water and getting land to connect the trail from up north, coming down 43 and then crossing over. There's been discussions, but as far as I know, there's no plans anywhere.
Okay. Just thought I'd ask. I
It's-
did mention it when I was at my meeting this afternoon as to if there was a possibility that could become a regional trail, but,
Correct me if I'm wrong, Ann, isn't that one of the gaps identified in the trail gaps that you put together for the city before?
Mayor, council, the Southwest Regional Trail was to be located adjacent to Marsh Lake Road. It is a bit wider than a city standard, so with the change in designation of the city street, Carver County no longer will be, at this point in time, is looking to place that regional trail along that, but it is designated in their master plan to be the Southwest Regional Trail connection at that location along Marsh Lake.
Unless I was wrong, weren't you referring north of Wasserman up?
Wasserman,
Correct, so the Wasserman connection was to come up 43 and connect into our existing
Going
trail
south, you're saying?
at Teller's Road. So yes, it's been identified within the gaps. The challenge there is again, the road right-of-way and the ditch areas. It likely will be development-driven when the farm property goes for development is likely when that will happen.
okay.
All right. Any other roundtable items? Mr. Vogt?
Couple things. Just to refresh everybody's memory, there's the Steiner Kelting Mental Wellness Facility is presently being worked on just up the street. And we may have forgotten about it, but I've been attending meetings with them on a regular basis for the past year and a half. And they've kept the public pretty well informed through the newspaper, but just a little update. They've selected a service provider by the company name is People Incorporated, is gonna run the facility, and that's a company that has 760 employees, over 40 locations, including 3 crisis centers similar to the Steiner Kelting facility. So these people are very competent and they're already involved. Construction is taking place on the building. It's being increased in size, and the inside of the building is being refurbished according to the new needs. And they haven't got a hard date for opening up, but they're planning to be in operation sometime in the first quarter of 2020. So this is gonna be coming up where this will be a functioning facility fairly quickly. And they're thinking about communicating different ways to the communities that they are involved with. And I told them not to forget Victoria City Hall and the Victoria Library. They're gonna use the libraries as a communications area too, so stay tuned. But this is coming to fruition and it's coming soon. That's just a little reminder.
All right. And just for the public's benefit, it's not in the city of Victoria, it's in the city of Chaska, but clearly it's right on the border next to, across the neighborhood from Lake Town.
It's across the street from Lake Town, and so one of the reasons I've attended most of the meetings is because to find out exactly how they're gonna operate and how that impacts the city of Victoria, because it is right across the street, literally, from us.
I remember when those discussions came up, there were questions about the security concerns. A lot of questions were raised that weren't answered at that time. At some point, are they gonna come back to the city and let us
I'm
know?
encouraging them to come to either the city council or to have a big seminar at the library, which would take place in this room. That's where conferences that the library schedules take place.
Perfect.
So, I mean, it's exciting. It's a Carver County service that will be available to all of us. Mental health affects
Are you saying all of us need to go?
Basically, statistically, of the 5 of us, 1 or 2 of us probably need some servicing. But anyway,
So if we all seem okay, look in the mirror.
I think the way to look at it is it's going to be an asset to the community, a tremendous asset. And it's going to be it's going to be very close. So it's a very positive thing.
Yeah, I had a client in last week asked me, because she saw things going on over there, and asked me if it was open yet, and I told her no, and she had expressed to me that there was a situation where she wished it had been open.
Yeah, I think people, once they understand it, they're gonna just, it'll make you feel good that you have that kind of support close by.
Yeah.
So the second thing,
Yep.
at the last meeting, one of the items on the agenda, it was to approve our external auditors, Abdu, Eck and Myers, for doing the 2019 audit, which would take them well into 2020 as our auditors of record. And we were just supposed to talk to the manager, the audit manager, and decide whether we were going to approve the 2019 audit services. Something happened at that meeting that upsets me, because it was a regression to stuff that was happening a year ago and hadn't happened for a long time. The audit manager was interrogated for about a half hour by the mayor, and basically with 10 or 11 questions that as they were being asked of the audit manager, I realized that all of them were misleading or false. So this thing happened where we put the audit manager of a very reputable CPA firm on the spot for, the mayor grilled this person for almost a half an hour. And I just would like to apologize to Abdo, Eck, and Meyer that this happened, and I want to apologize on behalf of myself for not intervening and trying to stop it. I mean, everything that was brought up was in some way misleading or downright erroneous. And I can go through, the purpose here is not to go through that, and the purpose is to look forward. I just want to bring that up, that if this ever happens again, where we take this meeting and turn it into an interrogation of one of our distinguished service providers, I will stand up and walk out of here, and I will encourage my fellow council members to follow me.
Council, discussion?
Dana did provide some clarifying data behind some of those questions that were asked. And I would love to make that available to the public for folks who might want to take a look at that. Is that possible to do? Can we put that out on the website or put it with the council packet so that the public is aware that there's more information to know about what was said last week, and we should put that out there for the public?
I agree. I think that's a good idea. I like that.
I don't have any objection to that, and I stand by those statements. The auditors didn't catch any of those things. A lot of that stuff was stopped since Dana came on with the new finance team, as I stated. And I know what I was told in the first 2 years I was on the council as mayor, that a lot of that stuff never got to me, and I know that the auditor wouldn't answer my question. So you don't have to agree with me, but I stand by those statements, and we were there to select that auditor. And I wanted the public to understand that in all of the years that they've been here, which was 6 or 7 years, they didn't find or to the best of my knowledge, make public all of these things that were going on. And we've had this discussion before, Councilmember Vogt, you and I, about I think we need a controls review, because if the auditor didn't find that stuff, we need to do a deep dive controls review to find those kind of things. And you don't have to agree with me, that's fine. But as far as I'm concerned, those statements were all valid. I talked with Dana about all of these things before I brought it forward, and I didn't think that we should use the same auditor based on that past performance. So I stand by that document. So when we discussed this before, final comments, and then we'll move on.
If I could, I would have a separate workshop and we go through those 10 questions, because every one of them had distortions, serious distortions in them. One of the questions related to fiscal year 2019, which the auditors haven't even seen yet. And the employee that was involved, and this was spending beyond authority, the employee that was involved has been terminated. So, I mean, every one of those is like that, where there was not something that the auditors would necessarily have to disclose. And in many cases, they were very much aware of the details. And again, wasn't necessary to disclose, nor was there necessarily a problem. Case in point, where you pointed out that we had many different accounts for our parks and recs funds, or we had multiple accounts for certain things instead of one. That's a ridiculous thing to bring up. You brought up the fact that nobody in this building was doing their own budgets, that the finance manager and the city manager were doing all the budgets. That's absolutely not true. There were people that didn't do budgets, but the majority of the dollars budgeted were done by directors and managers. I can go on and on. There's 10.
Well,
I've read the detail. I was here for a lot of that. The idea that the franchise fees has a fund balance after we did the undergrounding, to imply that there's something nefarious about that, and that it should have been part of an audit report, is ridiculous. And to imply that to the public, that the city was hiding a few $1 million of funds, is totally ridiculous and absolutely misleading and politically bent. I mean, there's no, everything, I'm an ex-certified public accountant. So I'm telling you that this was ridiculous, and I, again, apologize to Abdo and our audit firm, because this shouldn't have happened.
All right, so I'm going to close this out with the final comments. I stand by my comments. The auditors, you may have been aware of some of this stuff, but I can tell you that until Dana came on board and pointed this out, I was never aware of it. I'd been asking for money for crosswalks, which I brought up years ago, and I was never told these various funds or these other things existed. And the auditors, even in that meeting, said that they'd told staff, but yet they never told me. I never saw a management report. And those are the things that I believe they should have brought to the attention of the council. Now, you may have known, or others may have known. I didn't know.
Victoria Business Association knew.
Please don't I didn't interrupt you. Please don't interrupt me. So I stand by those comments. The auditors never brought any of that to my attention in the 3 years that I've been mayor. And I thought the public had a right to know that. So.
One comment,
Go ahead.
Councilmember Vogt, that fund balance you referred to on the franchise fees, I consider that a huge deal. We had an excess of $1 million. We borrowed in excess of $1 million. And for the 2 years I was on the council, I wasn't aware that of those dollars, of that excess fund, and maybe I should have been, but what I wasn't aware of until our city manager came on board, Dana, that created some accounting issues that could have affected our AAA bond rating. Dana had to take some extra steps just last month to put the revenue from that fund into a separate account to try to prevent what she refers to an arbitrage, and I don't even know what the heck that means, but it didn't sound good. I take umbrage with the fact that you say that everybody knew that million was sitting out there and it had to be spent within 3 years. I had never heard that. We had to spend that $1 million within 3 years, otherwise we would have created this negative accounting issue.
Well, at the time it happened, it was not fully understood what the extent of undergrounding was gonna be. And,
But
it was
we
very much up in
did
the air.
bond for more than $1 million what the project cost.
Which was based on estimates given to us by
That's
SL
a pretty
Energy.
big miss.
Right,
That was a big miss. We borrowed 1.7, we only needed 600-some thousand.
that's because the costs that actually were charged us were drastically more than what we
Yeah,
were told.
that's a big number.
Right, and my point in it, I was asking for money for various, looking for resources to see what the money had for these various projects that we've been talking about, and never once was I told this money existed, nor did I ever see it in an auditor's report. And my focus for those comments was, why hasn't any of this stuff been identified by you? And if it was identified by you, which it was in certain cases, why wasn't it brought to the council's attention in a management letter? Right? You may be a CPA, I'm not. I'm not going to go through and understand. Let me finish. I'm not going to go through a 200 or 300 page budget book and be able to read it the way that a trained CPA or CFO can do, right? I expected from the auditors an overview of the findings, and there was even a time where I know they made adjustments because of things discussed in a finance committee meeting, which goes back to an earlier discussion in tonight's meeting. But they made adjustments, and I even asked him in that report, which I think was 2018, why isn't there a management letter that talks about that you said we should have made these changes? That's the point I brought it up. And the reason I asked the auditors is because the auditors were there. We were renewing their contract or wanting to. And I'd never seen any management letter on all of these issues that Dana and Trish found in the last 8 months, give or take. So we're not here to discuss this further. If you want to discuss it further, we'll put it on the agenda
Just a
item. This is a
comment.
round.
This last thing was available to the finance committee, of which you're a member. This kind of thing was told to the finance
Yeah,
committee.
I never received a management letter, just like I said in the
Management
meeting.
letter.
There was
You're
never.
part of the finance committee.
You can confuse it all you want. There was never an executive,
I think
there were-
that's my point.
don't interrupt
Someone
me,
is being
please.
Someone's confused.
There was never an executive summary or management letter sent from the auditors to the council highlighting the things they found. That was my point, and I think the public understands exactly where I was going with this. If you want to discuss this further, we can add it to the agenda item. Deb, anything for roundtable?
No, thank you.
All right, reports. We'll start, Deb, with you.
No report.
Mr. Vogt. Reports.
Report is ready, it's been made with Steiner Kelty.
Judy?
I think I've said enough for tonight.
Mr. Gregory?
No report, no report.
Bob, I skipped you. Anything?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I apologize, I wasn't able to be at your last meeting. I know the Marsh Lake Road issue came up at that meeting, and it came up briefly tonight. I guess I would just say about that, Dana and Kara and I have been involved in that. We've been thinking about that. It's gonna come forward at your next meeting, but the two pieces of that I think we've been thinking about are exactly what is the county asking for? What is the request in the letter that you had in your packet? And I think we've moved the ball forward on understanding what the county's looking for, and then also you've gotten some feedback from attorneys representing landowners. I've seen those letters, I'm aware of the arguments made, I've talked to one of the attorneys, and so I think we'll have information for you at your next meeting about that.
All right, thank you. Dana?
Nothing from staff, Mayor, thanks.
All right, at this point, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second, please.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.